I don't usually write things down, let alone publish them online. But lately I've found myself pacing the floor at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, replaying every detail in my head. Writing it down might help me make sense of it. Or maybe it's just a way of telling someone, anyone, that what I've been through is real. I know how it sounds. Another stranger on the internet posting some true horror story. But I swear to you, every word I write happened to me. It started on a Thursday evening. My job isn't glamorous, just retail at a small electronics store tucked into the corner of a dying strip mall. The kind of place where the neon open sign buzzes louder than the footsteps of customers. Most nights we closed at 9, and I'd be the one to lock up, count the drawer, and walk to my car under those flickering parking lot lights. It was a routine I didn't even think about anymore. That night, though, something felt off. The air was colder than it should have been for late September. I remember pulling my jacket tighter as I stepped out, keys in hand. The lot was mostly empty. Just my car and one other vehicle parked way out near the tree line. Even though no stores out there had been open for hours, I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't seen her. A figure, standing just beyond the reach of the sodium lights, close enough for me to catch the outline but too far to make out details. At first I thought it was a customer waiting for a ride, but she wasn't moving, just standing there facing my direction. I unlocked my car, got in and started the engine. My headlights swept across the lot, catching her shape for a moment. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, with long hair hanging down over her face. Pale skin, no jacket despite the chill. She didn't flinch when the lights hit her. I told myself not to stare. People hang around malls at night sometimes. Maybe she was meeting someone. Maybe she was homeless. It wasn't my business. I drove off. Still, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror until the lot disappeared behind me. The next day at work was normal enough. Sales were slow. My manager was in a bad mood, and by closing time I was exhausted. As I stepped outside, I caught myself scanning the lot automatically. She wasn't there. I exhaled, half laughing at my own nerves. But just as I reached my car, I noticed something. Across the lot, in the same spot as before, the same car was parked by the tree line. The same model, same dent on the bumper. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was sitting inside, watching me. That night, when I pulled into my driveway, my porch light flickered twice before staying on. It had never done that before. Over the next week, little things kept piling up. I'd see her again, not every night, but often enough to know it wasn't coincidence. Always distant, always half-hidden. Once she was at the far end of the gas station when I stopped for fuel, just leaning against the ice freezer, as if she had been waiting. Another time I caught her reflection in the glass as I exited the store, a pale outline standing by the dumpsters. But here's the thing, nobody else seemed to notice her. One night, I nudged my coworker, Mike, and asked, "Do you see that girl by the lot?" He squinted, frowned, then shook his head. "What girl?" She was right there, standing in plain sight. The night it really sank in wasn't even that dramatic. I'd just pulled into my street, quiet, suburban, lined with maples that rattled their leaves like whispers. As I got out of the car, I heard something behind me. Not footsteps exactly, more like the crunch of gravel where there shouldn't have been any. I turned, and there she was, closer this time. Not across a lot, not in the distance, just 2 houses down, standing on the sidewalk under a broken street lamp. The shadows covered most of her, but I could see her head tilted, hair draped like a curtain. She was watching me. I froze. My keys dug into my palm. For what felt like a full minute, neither of us moved. Then, without sound, she turned and walked into the darkness between houses. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me sit upright, listening. At first, I considered going to the police. But what would I even say? That some girl was following me home? That she never spoke, never came close enough to prove she was a threat? They'd laugh me out of the station, so I kept quiet. Tried to convince myself it was stress, paranoia, maybe even sleep deprivation. But then came the moment that ripped away any possibility of rational explanation. It was a Sunday. I'd taken the day off, spent most of it cleaning the apartment, trying to distract myself. By midnight, I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone. That's when the motion sensor light in my backyard flicked on. I froze. Slowly, I turned toward the window, and there she was, right outside. Her face was pressed almost against the glass, skin pale in the glow, lips parted like she was whispering something I couldn't hear. Her eyes, I swear to you they weren't just eyes. They were empty sockets, black as the night itself. I dropped my phone. By the time I scrambled to the window, she was gone. No footprints, no sign of anyone in the yard. But from that moment forward, I knew. She wasn't just some strange girl haunting parking lots. She had followed me home. Her eyes weren't right. They weren't human. At first glance, they looked like pits of shadow. But when the light hit them just right, I caught a glimmer, like wet stone at the bottom of a well. I staggered back, nearly tripping over the chair. By the time I dared to look again, she was gone. The yard was empty. The light swayed in the night breeze, insects buzzing aimlessly around it. I didn't sleep at all. Every sound, every groan of the pipes, every rustle of the trees outside felt amplified, like the house itself was holding its breath. I sat up until dawn, staring at the locked window, replaying the image of her face again and again. The next morning, I tried to tell myself it had been a dream, that maybe I'd nodded off at the table and jolted awake in some half-sleep paralysis state. But deep down I knew better. The details were too sharp, the cold breath fogging the glass too real, still. I went to work trying to act normal. "Man, you look like hell," Mike said as I shuffled in. "Didn't sleep," I muttered. He smirked. "Another late-night horror binge. Told you those YouTube creepypastas will fry your brain." I almost laughed, almost told him what I'd seen. But I stopped myself. He wouldn't understand. No one would. That night when we closed up, I lingered by the counter, pretending to check the register while Mike locked the front. I didn't want to step outside. Didn't want to see her again. But eventually there was no excuse left. The lot was quiet. The same car was still parked by the trees. I couldn't see inside, but I swear I felt eyes on me. I climbed into my car, locked the doors immediately, and just sat there gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Then I turned the key and drove straight home without looking back. But when I turned onto my street, I felt that weight again, the certainty that I wasn't alone. I parked, stepped out quickly and scanned the sidewalk. Empty. Relief started to wash over me, until I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Wet footprints, bare, leading from the street up to my front steps. I didn't even look around. I bolted inside, slammed the door, and locked every bolt I had. For days after that, she kept her distance. I'd catch glimpses of her across the lot, or reflected faintly in a shop window, always just far enough away that I couldn't be sure. It was like she was testing me, watching to see how I'd react. Then one evening, my friend Jenna dropped by. We'd been close for years, and she had a knack for reading me too well. "What's up with you lately?" she asked, curling up on the couch with a soda. "You've been jumpy as hell. Something going on at work?" I hesitated. My instinct was to keep it bottled up, but the pressure had been eating me alive. So I told her, not everything, but enough. About the girl. The parking lot. The window. Jenna listened, her brow furrowed. When I finished, she didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. "Are you sure you're not just stressed out? Seeing things?" I thought so at first. But it's not just once. It keeps happening. She's always there. Jenna tapped her nails against the can. "Then let me come with you tomorrow. After your shift. If there's really someone creeping around, we'll catch her." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, almost made me believe this could be solved. That it was just a flesh-and-blood person who could be confronted. The next night, she drove to meet me at the store. I was grateful not to be walking out alone. We stepped into the lot together, the cool air brushing against our faces. I scanned the tree line, heart hammering, and there she was, standing under the broken lamp just barely in the shadows. Long hair, pale face tilted toward me. "Do you see her?" I whispered to Jenna. Jenna squinted, then frowned. "See who?" My blood ran cold. "She's right there," I hissed. Jenna shook her head. "There's no one." I turned back, my stomach dropping. The spot was empty. That was when I realized the truth. She wasn't a person. Not someone I could point to, not someone anyone else could see. She was here for me, and only me, and every day she was getting closer. I used to think the worst part was the sight of her, Those blank eyes, that curtain of hair. But now I know it isn't. The worst part is the waiting. The not knowing when or where she'll appear next. The feeling that no matter how many locks you throw, no matter how bright the lights, she's already inside. After the incident with Jenna at the store, something shifted. It was as if she knew I'd tried to prove her existence to someone else, and now she was punishing me for it. It started small. A smell. Damp earth like a freshly dug grave lingering in the hallway of my apartment, then sounds. Faint dragging noise under the floorboards, always just on the edge of hearing. Sometimes at night I'd hear a whisper, low, unintelligible, coming from the bathroom even though no one was in there. I tried to ignore it. Plugged in air fresheners, slept with white noise blasting from my phone. But the more I tried to shut it out, the more insistent it became. The first time I saw her inside was a Tuesday. I'd left my bedroom door cracked open, something I never do. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of water running in the kitchen. My heart dropped. I live alone. I slid out of bed, the floorboards cold against my feet, and edged down the hallway. The light above the sink flickered weakly, casting stuttering shadows across the tile. She was standing there, not outside. Not reflected in a window, inside, in my kitchen. Her back was to me. Her hair dripped water onto the floor, though I hadn't heard rain that night. The faucet was running full blast, and she was holding her hands under it like she was trying to wash something off. I froze. She stopped moving. Slowly, she turned her head, but not all the way, just enough for me to see one dark socket, one hollow stare. And then she whispered something. It wasn't English. It was a breath. A hiss, syllables that felt too old, too heavy. Before I could move, the light went out. When it flicked back on, she was gone. The faucet still ran. The puddle of water on the floor glistened like mercury. I started having dreams after that. In them, I'm walking through a long corridor lined with doors. I can hear her bare feet slapping the floor behind me. No matter how fast I run, the corridor stretches. Sometimes I open a door, and behind it is my own kitchen, my own hallway, but drenched in water. Sometimes she's closer. Sometimes she whispers my name. I stopped inviting people over. Stopped answering texts. Jenna tried calling a few times, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up. What could I say?
Hey, remember that invisible girl?
She's living in my apartment now. My world shrank to the walls of my home, the path to my job and back again. Every shadow held the threat of her shape. Every mirror felt like a trap. One night, brushing my teeth, I looked up at the bathroom mirror and nearly screamed. She was behind me, not in the room, in the reflection, standing where the shower should have been, her hair hanging straight down, her head cocked at an impossible angle. I spun around. The bathroom was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, it was blank again. I tried everything. Burning sage, sprinkling salt at the door, praying out loud, even though I'd never been religious. Nothing changed. If anything, she seemed amused. I'd catch faint scratches on the walls in the morning, lines forming symbols I didn't recognize. The smell of damp earth grew stronger. Sometimes my phone would glitch, the screen filling with static and then flickering to a single phrase in gray text. You left me. I don't know what she means. Last night, she finally spoke clearly. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, too afraid to go to bed. Around 2 a.m., the TV switched itself on, the volume low. Static hissed across the screen, and then from somewhere behind me, a voice said, "You can't run from me." I turned, heart hammering. She was there, crouched in the corner of the room like a spider, her hands flat on the floor, her face inches from mine. This time, her eyes weren't empty sockets. They were mine. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up on the floor at sunrise, the couch cushions soaked through like they'd been dragged from a river. She's closer now, always closer. And I know deep down that the next time she speaks, it won't be in a whisper. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The night she crouched in the corner, whispering with my own eyes, I realized two things. She wasn't going to leave, and she wanted something from me. The question was what? Fear had kept me frozen, but fear alone wasn't going to save me. If she was tied to me, then maybe she was tied to this place, to this town. There had to be a reason she'd chosen me, or at least a reason she wouldn't let go. So I started digging. I began with the parking lot. On my next day off, I drove back to the strip mall where I'd first seen her. The car was still there. Same dented bumper, same spot by the tree line. Dust caked the windshield. Someone had drawn a crude smiley face in the dirt, which told me it hadn't moved in weeks, maybe months. I tried the door. Locked. Peered through the glass. Inside, the seats were covered with trash. Fast food wrappers, empty bottles, and a woman's purse slumped against the passenger side like someone had dropped it there and never returned. I wrote down the license plate number. Then I walked over to the trees. The ground was soft, damp, too damp for this time of year, and as I stood there, I smelled it again. That wet earth smell that had invaded my apartment. The same smell she carried with her. I went to the library. Not Google, not Reddit, actual physical archives. Old newspapers, local history records. It took hours of scanning headlines before something caught my eye. Young woman missing after late-night shift at local mall. The article was from 2 years ago. No body recovered. Last seen leaving her workplace, an electronics store in the same strip mall where I worked. Her name was Elena Matthews. She was 24. There was a grainy photo attached. Her hair was long, dark. Her skin pale, her eyes. They were blurred from the print quality, but I could almost imagine the sockets empty and black. I slammed the folder shut, my heart hammering so loud the librarian glanced over. It was her. It had to be. That night I couldn't stop repeating her name. Elena, saying it out loud, felt dangerous, like inviting her closer. But I needed to know if it mattered. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of the faucet running again. I stumbled into the kitchen, half asleep. And there she was, standing in the corner, dripping water. Her hair plastered to her face, I whispered. Elena, she froze, the dripping stopped, and then, very slowly, her head turned toward me, her mouth opened. Water spilling from it in a steady stream, splattering onto the floor. Her voice came out like a gargle, like someone drowning. Help! Me. I backed into the hall, trembling, and she vanished before my eyes. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Elena wasn't just some spirit wandering aimlessly. She wanted me to know her name, her story. But why me? I kept reading about her the next day. Her car had been found abandoned, the same car I'd seen in the lot. Police suspected foul play, but no suspects were ever identified. There were rumors. A jealous ex-boyfriend, a late-night robbery gone wrong. Even whispers about something supernatural. But none of it was ever proven. The article ended with a plea from her family. If anyone knows what happened to Elena, please come forward. That night, I dreamed of water again. But it wasn't the endless corridor this time. I was standing waist-deep in a river, the current pulling at me. Across from me, Elena stood on the opposite bank, her face clearer than it had ever been. She wasn't the hollow-eyed figure that haunted me. She was human, alive, almost normal. She raised a hand, beckoning me. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear. And then the river surged, pulling me under. When I woke, my sheets were soaked through. Not damp, soaked as if I'd been pulled from the river itself. Elena wants me to help her. I know that now. But she's not patient. Every day her visits are more violent. Every night her whispers grow louder. And the message is always the same. You left me, but I didn't even know her. So why does she think I did? I'd been clinging to one fragile belief, that Elena couldn't cross fully into my world, that she was bound to shadows, reflections, dreams, that if I locked my doors and avoided mirrors, she would stay just beyond reach. That illusion shattered on the 5th night after I learned her name. It was nearly midnight when the power went out. I was sitting in the living room, laptop open, pouring through more articles about her disappearance. 1 second the glow of the screen lit the room. The next I was plunged into total blackness. The hum of the refrigerator died. The heater cut out. Silence pressed against me like a heavy hand. I grabbed my phone, fumbling for the flashlight. Before I could switch it on, I heard it 3 soft knocks. Not at the front door. From inside. From the hallway, my stomach dropped. Hello? My voice cracked. I don't know why I spoke. Maybe I hoped it was something explainable, even though I knew better. The knocks came again, closer. I forced myself up, phone trembling in my grip. The beam of light sliced down the hallway. landing on the closed bedroom door at the far end. The door creaked, just slightly, and then I saw her. She was standing inside the doorway, one hand pressed flat against the wood, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders. Water pooled at her bare feet, dripping steadily onto the carpet. "Elena," I whispered. Her head twitched at the sound of her name, and she took one step forward. I froze. She wasn't a vision, not a reflection. She was in my house. The smell of damp earth filled my lungs. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Her mouth opened, water spilling down her chin, and she rasped, "You left me." The phone light flickered. She moved closer, jerky, unnatural, like her joints bent the wrong way. Each step left a wet print on the carpet. I backed into the living room, my heart hammering. "Please," I stammered. "I didn't. I don't even know you." Her hair parted just enough for me to see her face. Not hollow sockets this time, but bruised, bloodshot eyes filled with rage and grief. "You saw me," she hissed. "You heard me, you..." Walked away. I shook my head violently. "Do I never..." The light surged back on. The room glared bright, and she was gone. All that remained was the water, a trail of wet footprints leading from the hallway to where I stood, ending at my feet. I didn't sleep. I sat with every light in the apartment burning, clutching a kitchen knife like it could stop something that wasn't flesh and blood. By morning, the carpet was dry. No trace of her remained, but I knew the truth now. She wasn't bound outside. She wasn't limited to dreams or mirrors. Elena could enter my home whenever she wanted, and each time she came, she was closer to touching me. The day after Elena stepped into my apartment, everything felt wrong. The walls seemed thinner, like sound traveled through them too easily. The mirrors reflected a fraction too slow. Every shadow carried weight. I tried to go about my day, coffee, shower, work, but I couldn't shake the image of her dripping hair, her bruised eyes, her words. "You left me." By evening, I cracked. I needed answers. I dug deeper into online forums, true crime threads, even archived local news reports. Most had nothing but vague rumors. But then I found an old cached article. It was from a small-town paper, dated nearly 2 decades ago. Elena Viscari, 19. Last seen walking home from a late shift at a diner near Lake Marrow. Witnesses reported a struggle near the roadside, but no suspects were identified. Despite extensive searches, only her belongings were recovered. A purse, 1 shoe, and a locket. I stared at the photo that accompanied it. Grainy, scanned, almost blurred into nothing. But I knew those eyes, it was her. I should have stopped there. But obsession gnawed at me. Scrolling further, I found forum posts claiming Lake Marrow was cursed. People saw figures wandering the shore at night. Drivers reported hitchhikers vanishing from the back seat. More than one person swore a soaking wet girl knocked on their door after dark. And always, the same warning. Never speak her name. Never acknowledge her if she follows you. My chest tightened. I'd already broken both rules. That night I tried to keep calm. I left the TV blaring, lights blazing, phone charging by my side. I told myself knowledge was power, that if I understood her story, I could protect myself. But at 3:07 a.m., I woke up choking. Not from a dream. My throat was filled with water. I rolled off the couch, coughing, sputtering, gasping for air as cold liquid flooded from my mouth. My lungs burned. I could hear it dripping onto the floor, pooling around me. When I finally looked up, she was there again. Not in the shadows. Not in the corner of my eye. She was crouched over me, her wet hair dangling into my face, her lips inches from mine. And she whispered, barely audible, yet somehow echoing inside my skull, "You know my story. Now you must finish it." Then she was gone, and I was left gasping on the soaked carpet. Trembling in the stale smell of lake water, I realized something then. Through the terror and confusion, Elena didn't just want me to see her. She wanted me to carry her unfinished death. And if I couldn't find out what really happened at Lake Marrow, she'd drown me in her place. Lake Marrow was only a 2-hour drive from my apartment, but the road felt endless. The deeper I went, the fewer streetlights there were until the darkness seemed to swallow my car whole. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Who would believe me if I did? That a dead girl had followed me home? that she was demanding I uncover the truth of her death. Even I barely believed it, but my carpet still smelled of stagnant water. My throat still burned from drowning in my own sleep. I had no choice. The lake came into view just after dawn. Mist clung to the surface like a veil, shifting and curling in the cold air. The surrounding woods were dense, quiet, and damp, the kind of silence that pressed against your ears. I parked near the rotting dock. The board sagged under my weight as I walked, groaning like old bones. At the end, I knelt down and dipped my fingers into the water. It was freezing and smelled of mud and decay, and then I saw it, a single shoe waterlogged and half buried in the muck near the reeds. My stomach twisted. The article had mentioned one of her shoes was found at the roadside, but this one matched the grainy photo in the report. Elena, I whispered before I could stop myself. The water rippled violently. I stumbled back as bubbles erupted near the dock. The mist thickened, rising up like hands clutching at the air, and for a moment, just a breath, I saw her face beneath the surface, pale, wide-eyed. Screaming silently, I staggered onto the shore, heart pounding, but the lake went still as glass. On the ground near my feet was something new, a rusted chain, broken at one end. It hadn't been there seconds ago. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't stop myself. My hand shook as I picked it up. The metal cold and slick with algae, and suddenly in the silence of the woods, I heard a voice behind me. "You found it." I spun around. No one was there. Only the mist curling closer and the faint, rhythmic sound of water dripping onto dry leaves. I clutched the chain and realized this was no longer about her haunting me. She was leading me somewhere, and if I didn't follow, she'd drag me down into the lake to join her. The chain weighed heavy in my hands as I left the dock. Its rust flaked onto my skin, leaving a reddish smear that almost looked like dried blood. I wanted to drop it, to pretend I hadn't touched it, but every instinct screamed that this was part of her story. The woods around Lake Marrow were dense, overgrown, almost claustrophobic. I followed a narrow trail leading away from the water, hoping for answers, though my gut warned me I'd regret it. After only a few minutes, I found something half buried in the dirt, a locket. Its silver surface was tarnished and cracked, but when I pried it open, I froze. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, Elena. Her eyes in the picture were nothing like the hollow, rage-filled stare she wore now. In the photo, she was smiling, alive, human. That's when I heard it, branches snapping in the distance. Not the shuffle of an animal, but the deliberate crunch of someone walking. "Hello?" My voice wavered. No answer. I gripped the chain tighter, my pulse thundering in my ears. Then I noticed something else. Just beyond the trees, the ground dipped into a shallow ravine. And inside it, I could see the warped shape of something metallic hidden beneath brush and moss. I climbed down slowly, heart hammering, and brushed away the leaves. It was a car, or what was left of one, rusted, windows shattered, its frame swallowed by earth, and in the back seat chained to the doorframe were the faint remains of human bones. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't an accident. Someone had trapped her here, locked her inside, and left her to drown when the lake swallowed the car. My hand shook as I raised the locket. Elena. I whispered again against my better judgment. The air grew cold. My breath plumed white in front of me, and then, clear as day, I heard her voice behind me. "He put me here." I spun around, but there was only the empty woods, and the sound of water dripping onto metal. I couldn't stop shaking as I stumbled away from the rusted car in the ravine. My mind kept replaying her words. He put me here. Someone had done this to her. Someone had chained her inside that car, shoved it into the water, and buried her existence under mud and silence. But who? Back at the lakeside, I searched again for any trace of witnesses, old campsites, anything. That's when I found a weathered wooden sign half hidden in the weeds. "Private property, no trespassing." The name carved into the bottom made my stomach lurch. Givaskari Veskari, her name. I drove into town, desperate for answers. At a local diner, I asked cautiously about the sign. The waitress, a woman in her 60s, froze when I said the name. "You don't want to dig there," she muttered, glancing around like someone might hear. "That family? Bad history. Her uncle owned most of the land near Marrow. People say he kept to himself, but I remember. Folks whispered about him. That girl went missing and he left town not long after. Disappeared, just like she did. I pressed her, but she shook her head and walked away. That night I returned to my motel room, chain and locket still in my bag. I placed them on the dresser, staring at them like cursed relics. I thought maybe sleep would come. But at 2 a.m., the mirror across the room fogged over by itself, and in the condensation, words began to scrawl slowly, as though traced by an unseen finger. He still breathes, I bolted upright, hard in my throat. Elena? I whispered. The mirror cleared. The room fell silent again. But I knew what she wanted now. It wasn't enough to uncover her death. She wanted me to find the man who killed her and finish what time never did. I didn't sleep after the words appeared on the mirror. Every creak of the motel walls felt like footsteps. Every shadow seemed to hold her dripping silhouette. By dawn, I made a decision. If Elena wanted me to find him, I had to start digging into the Viscari family. The county library was almost empty when I arrived. Dusty records sat untouched in metal drawers, the kind no one had opened in years. After hours of scanning old property maps and local reports, a pattern began to emerge. Her uncle, Gerald Viscari, had owned land all around Lake Marrow. He'd been arrested once for assault, but the charges vanished. And in every article there were rumors. Women disappearing along rural highways, strange noises from the woods at night. But the most chilling discovery was a grainy police photo. Gerald, standing beside the very car I had found rusting in the ravine. The caption read, "Questioned but released. No evidence found." That night, Elena returned. I woke to the sound of water dripping steadily onto the motel carpet. She stood at the foot of my bed, eyes hollow but fixed directly on me. In her hand dangled the rusted chain, the same one I had taken from the ravine. "You see him now," she rasped. Her voice was like wind over broken glass. "You must end it." I shook my head, heart racing. "I can't. Elena, I'm not a killer." Her head twitched violently, water spraying from her hair. She stepped closer, each footprint soaking the carpet. "If you do not finish this, he will breathe forever." The lights flickered, and for an instant I wasn't in the motel anymore. I was standing in the ravine again, the car submerged, her hand slapping desperately against the glass, the chain rattling, the water rising. Her scream filled my ears, not from her throat, but inside my skull. Then I was back in the room, drenched in icy water, gasping, and she was gone. I realized then I wasn't being haunted anymore. I was being conscripted. Elena wanted vengeance, and she had chosen me as her weapon.